Welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to join these two lengths of timber in their length using a splice joint. The type of splice joint we're going to use is called a halved lap, and that entails removing half the thickness at one end of one board from the top and half the thickness of the other board from the bottom, so that they sit together and are flush all the way round. First off, I've prepared these two lengths of timber to be the same width and the same depth. I've prepared these two sides as the face sides and these two edges as the face edges, and that's the way the joint will go together. I've shot the ends of these two lengths perfectly square using the Japanese planing board, and now we need to mark up for the cuts we need to make. If I just mark in pencil first of all to show you what we're doing, we're going to remove material from this edge here down to the halfway point. And on this side we're going to remove material opposite the face side up to the halfway point. So to mark them out, we'll put these two next to each other, such that the saw line we're going to do across the widths are lined up. We'll make sure that the shot ends are both lined up, and we'll mark a line across the boards. And I'm going to be doing this at just a little more than the width of the individual boards. The strength of the joint comes almost entirely from the glue surface area, and so I think you'll understand that the longer the glue surface area, the stronger the joint. But if we overlap for a long joint, we're using a lot of material. So you have to weigh up the advantages of stronger joint over the material that you lose. Now that we've marked our cut line on the widths, we need to transfer that down the edges of the board. And I'm going to do this first of all in pencil, because we don't quite know how deep we want to go yet. This will just give us an indication for when we mark the cut line along the edge. To mark for the cut along the edge of the boards, I've set my marking gauge to exactly half the width of this edge. And marking from the face side on both of the components, I can mark from my pencil line on the edge right the way to the end with a few light strokes. And on the other side, and along the end. You may find this easier if you clamp your work. And before we saw, let's mark the areas that we're going to remove to avoid any mistakes. So laying them back in the orientation we started with, we want to remove this material from the saw line to the end of the board, down to the depth of our marking line on the side. And again on this side. And on the other component, it's opposite the face side, from our knife line to the end, and on the lower side of the edges. The final marking out is to mark the cut line across the edge of the board from the side we're cutting off down to the halfway marking line. So we put our marking knife in the previous line and draw it down to our gauged line. Always making sure that our stock is on either the face side or the face edge. And we do this on both components. Being careful not to take your line any further than the gauge line, because any scoring past that point will be left when the joint is complete, so visibly it won't be nice, but also that scoring will have weakened the material that's left behind. So we have marked a line down from our face side to the halfway point on the edge and gauged a line across there. We've marked a line across the side at the length we want the splice to be, and then we've joined the gauged line to the marking line on our width with a knife line there. Now we can remove all of this area of timber and the equivalent from the other piece and test fit our joint. Prior to sawing, I'm going to create a little channel by paring away a little piece of wood from our waste up to our knife line. That just gives us a channel where we can place our saw in before we start to cut. Using the planing stop on our Japanese planing board, it's then very easy to make the first cut across the width of the board. Just be careful not to go too deep. We can then make the cheek cuts with a dovetail saw or a tenon saw, depending on the size of the joint, with the work held in the vise. Clean this sawn surface down to your knife lines using either a chisel or a shoulder plane. Remember to work across the grain to avoid splitting. Use a sharp chisel to ensure that your shoulders are perfectly square. Register your blade of your chisel in your knife line and just apply downward pressure at 90 degrees. If your joint is going to be a show joint and you're going to see it perhaps on a piece of furniture, spend a little extra time and make sure that all of the joint goes together nice and tight. I'm going to glue this up now and then we'll come back and see how nice that joint looks. Make sure you apply plenty of clamping pressure. A couple of strokes of the plane. Finely set smoother. And soon our joint is looking very good indeed. So there you have the half lapped splice joint.